In this episode, we're setting up character power-up Niagara effects. Let's get to it. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. And for the past 5 episodes, we've been knee-deep in AI, and quite frankly, I could use a change of pace, so we're doing something today a little bit lighter. This episode is heavily reliant on the gameplay ability system that we started back in episode 26, and we've done a ton of stuff with gameplay abilities over the course of this series, but you should be able to use everything we set up in this episode just fine, even without all of that. The one thing you might want to check is episode 33, where we set up our gameplay ability pickup actors. The idea behind this episode is that virtually in any game, whenever the character gets a new ability or gets a power up to an ability, that some sort of visual effect is indicating that to the player. We're going to start by creating a new Niagara system that would actually work awesomely as sort of a Human Torch-like ability, and that's not what we're going to end up setting up, but I'm definitely going to keep that system on ice because we might come back to it in the future and use it for something. So here's the vision I have for gameplay abilities in the game that we're making. So whenever a character runs over or runs into an ability pickup actor in the game, then they're going to get that ability. But if they have the ability already, then instead of getting a second ability, which really wouldn't help at all, they're going to get a power up to their existing ability. So in this episode, we're setting up different ability pickup effects depending on whether the character already has the ability or if it's a brand new ability. And as our game stands, we currently have 3 fire abilities. We have a torchlight ability, we have a fireball ability, and we have a flamethrower ability. Torchlight was episode 23, fireball was episode 30, flamethrower was episode 27. And we also have an air ability, a jump and speed boost that we set up in episodes 39 and 40. So we're going to have different ability boost effects for air versus fire, but then also different effects for a brand new ability versus one that's just getting a power up. So we're going to do a total of 4 this episode, but in the future when we have other kinds of abilities, we're definitely going to expand that. So here are the 2 new features that we're using for the first time in this episode, both of them from Niagara. And honestly, this is perhaps the single coolest thing that Niagara can do, and it's really not that much setup to get up and running. So let's get to it. So to start out today, if you're following along with this series, we're going to take out our AI character temporarily just for performance reasons. And you can also take out this from last episode. We won't need that. And we're going to navigate to our content drawer, into our Niagara folder, and under gameplay ability pickups, I'm actually going to create a new folder here, and we're going to name it ability pickup character effects. And just like we did in episode 27 with the flamethrower, we're going to start this episode by taking something out of starter content and converting it from Cascade into Niagara. So for that, I'm going to go to content and do our starter content folder, particles, and we're going to right click on P Fire and convert to Niagara System. And if you don't see this option, you just have to come up to plugins and make sure you got Cascade to Niagara Converter checked. And if not, you got to check this, restart the engine. So we're going to right click, convert to Niagara System. And I'm just going to rename this system. It's going to be NS for Niagara System, Fire Mesh Sprite Base. And once we got that, we can expand under Niagara, that gameplay ability pickups, and we can drag it into our ability pickup character effects folder. Move here, and we'll navigate over there. And we'll double click to go into this Niagara system. And once again, if you've followed previous episodes on this, we've got to acknowledge and clear issues. And just so that you don't spend extra time on this, so what we're going to do is uncheck Flame 001, Smoke, and also uncheck Sparks. So we're not going to use any of those emitters for this pickup effect. Now, if you want to use those emitters, by all means, you can experiment. But just in me playing with it to get the effect that I wanted, I only needed these 3. So the 3 that we're not going to use, I'm just going to move them over to the right here, and we'll consolidate the 3 that we are using. And for each of these, just select each emitter, acknowledge, and clear issues. And sorry this takes a little while, guys, and yeah, I still don't know any faster way of doing it. Right down here, we see a spawn rate one. Acknowledge and clear this issue as well. And for the Embers emitter, it says this emitter is GPU and is using dynamic bounds mode. So instead, what we have to do is select under properties here. Instead of dynamic, we're just going to do fixed. And actually, all 3 of these emitters, we're going to switch over to GPU. And the reason we can do that is because all these effects are always going to originate around the player. And because our camera is always focused on the character, on the player, we don't need to worry about seeing the effects that are actually generated off screen. And if you want to know why this is relevant in more detail, you could check out episode 22. I do a comprehensive overview of Niagara GPU. And same with the Embers and distortion emitters under spawn rate, we have to acknowledge and clear the issue here too. So same thing with distortion. And last but not least, we go to the Niagara log and we can acknowledge and clear these as well. All right, so now let's get the Human Torch effect that I talked about on the intro up and running. So we're going to start by deleting and cleaning up a few things in each emitter. So what we're going to delete is the light renderer. We will not need that for the flames. And we're going to switch both distortion and the flames over to GPU. So instead of CPU, GPU sim. Instead of dynamic, fixed. Same thing with this one. Under the Flames emitter, we also don't need the Cascade Conversion Light Properties node. We can get rid of that. So now on to some updates for the Flames emitter. So I'm going to increase this spawn rate considerably. So we're going to increase it to 5,000. Now we're talking. We're going to change the particle lifetime. Under initialize particle, we're going to change this to 0.3 to 0.5 seconds. Under the shape location of sphere, we're going to make the sphere radius a lot smaller. So we're going to make this 1/10 of what it is, just 3. And what that's going to do is when we apply this effect to a mesh, then it's going to be much closer to the actual dimensions of the mesh. We're going to uncheck this second add velocity node. We don't need this one, just the first one. We got to change a couple of things under the sprite renderer here. So if I select that, for the alignment, instead of velocity aligned, I'm going to do unaligned. And for the facing mode, just make sure this is set to face camera. Then some minor updates to the color. So if we go to the color, I'm just going to make this fade out a lot faster. So we're going to right click on the alpha. We're going to add a key, move this down to about there. About 0.5. So basically it's going to fade in very quickly and fade down to about half strength very quickly, but then fade out to nothing a little bit more slowly. All right, now we did all the boring stuff. Let's do the interesting stuff. So particle spawn, we're going to add a module. And this module that we're adding is initialize mesh reproduction sprite. And I'm going to move this up directly above shape location. And we're getting a warning saying no mesh is assigned. So let's assign our mesh. And for this, we're going to assign our mani mesh, but you could choose any mesh you like. So scroll down. And I'll choose SKM Mani Simple. And we also get this error saying CPU access. Let's just fix now. The last update we're going to make here is for particle scale. We're going to increase this to 40. And when we do that, now we got the flames in a roughly humanoid shape. Because what this module does is it basically takes our mesh, whatever mesh we pass into it, and that's this source mode here. We could either set a specific source, or we could say whatever parent this Niagara system is attached to, use that as the source mesh. And that's what we're going to do. That's what default does here. But whatever mesh this Niagara system is assigned to, it's going to take all the particles and it's going to spawn them all along the mesh, skinning on the fly. But the other thing we have to do here is, in addition to initializing the mesh reproduction sprites on particle spawn, we also have to update the location of the particles every tick in the particle update, because otherwise they're going to spawn on our character, but then when our character moves, the particles are still going to remain wherever the character was, and they're not actually going to move with the character. So what we need to do to update the location of the particles in real time is +sign here under particle update, and we search for skeletal mesh location. And everything under the particle update, this is executed every single tick. And I'm just going to move this right below particle state. We get the same warning that no mesh is assigned, so I'm just going to come down, choose our same Mani Simple. So that's looking a little different now. So all of the fire particles are staying with that shape of the mesh. But just for the initial demonstration, I want you to see what this does if you don't have this node here. So let's uncheck this and we'll come back to it and we'll fix it after. But let's just finish out the rest of the updates we need for the system. So under embers, we need to change the spawn rate here from 30, which is tiny, to a small number like 20,000. But again, we're going to take our initialized mesh reproduction sprite here, right click and copy. We're going to come down under particle spawn, right click paste, move that directly under initialized particle. And the reason it looks like that is because it's at 40 times scale. So we'll make this 1. And now we got our embers all flying up from our fireman. We still got to change a bunch of things. So under initialized particle, change this to a minimum 0.3, maximum 0.5. So lifespan that's much shorter. Under shape location, same kind of thing. Change the sphere radius down to 3.0. And this is up to you. It depends on the effect that you want. If you want all the particles kind of buzzing around our character, you don't need to do this. But for me, I actually want the particles clinging to our character. And so because of that, I'm going to uncheck the add velocity nodes, both of them. And I'm also going to uncheck the acceleration force here. You know, in my testing, I didn't uncheck solve forces and velocity, but I think you can do that too. Let's try that out. Yeah, we can uncheck Cascade conversion orbit. Don't need that. And that's going to make all the particles stay right there on the character. But again, if our character moves, the particles will continue staying right there. So what do we need to do? Well, take our skeletal mesh location, copy that, paste it under particle update. And I'm just going to move that directly underneath particle state here. And I'll uncheck it just for now, because again, I want you to see the effect that that has. If I go into the sprite renderer now, so we're going to change our alignment and facing mode. So alignment is going to be custom alignment, and the facing mode is going to be custom facing vector here. And what that's going to do, you can't really see it yet, but what that's going to do is it's actually going to align to the mesh itself. Each particle is going to be roughly the same shape and rotation that that particular part of the mesh is at that location. And the way I'm thinking about this embers emitter is it's actually going to be the size and shape of the character. Like it's going to show you that character in full detail. So for our last emitter, the distortion, just a few updates on here. So we're going to select our spawn rate, change that to 400. Initialize particle, same kind of thing here. It's going to be 0.3 to 0.5 seconds. Shape location, once again, sphere radius 3.0. We can also uncheck the add velocity node here. We don't need any extra velocity, but we will have an acceleration force, so it goes straight up. Yeah, we're going to copy the initialized mesh reproduction sprite from our first emitter, flames, and we'll paste that under particle spawn. Move it up again. This one, we're going to change the scale to 60, and we'll copy our skeletal mesh location again, copy that, and paste it under particle update. Move it up directly underneath particle state, and again, uncheck it. Compile and save this. And so we've got our first test ready to go, at least for the emitter, but now we need to hook it up to our third person character blueprint so we can actually test it. So I'm going to navigate to my third person character, and all I'm going to do for this is on the event graph, I'm just going to come down to the bottom of my event graph, and we'll just do a keyboard button. So keyboard, let's do, how about U? And when U is pressed, we will spawn system attached, and this will spawn the Niagara system. And the Niagara system we need is ns_fire mesh sprite base. Now, in order for the particles to actually accumulate on the mesh, we need to connect it to our mesh. So for the attach to component, we got to connect up our mesh here. And I'm just going to do the attach point name at the pelvis. I don't know if that's necessary, just a good practice though. So let's compile and save this, and we are ready to test. All right, so we hit U, and voila. But watch what happens when I move with this active. So when I'm standing still, it's totally fine. But if I move around, yeah, the fire and the particles, they go in all different directions. And that's because we unchecked the update skeletal mesh location under the particle update. So it's not actually adhering to our mesh on a per tick basis. So let's actually go back into our Niagara system, and we'll check that now and you'll see the effect. So we go back to our NS Fire Mesh Sprite base and just check off the skeletal mesh location there, and this one, and this one. And what that's going to do is then all the particles will adhere to the mesh as we're moving around. And the last thing you need to do here is under the sprite renderer for the embers emitter, we need to change the alignment and the facing mode. So make sure to change the alignment here to unaligned and the facing mode change to face camera. There's one last setting here that you probably want to change, and I just want to illustrate this if I uncheck the flames. So we'll see here that all of our particles for our embers are just adhering to the bones, and what's causing that is right here under skeletal mesh location under sampling, mesh sampling type skeleton bones. If we change this instead for them to adhere to the surface of the mesh, so triangles, then they're showing up all over the mesh here. So I'm going to check my flames again, and to get the best effect, you also want to do the same exact thing on the skeletal mesh location for the flames as well. So we can select that and then change, instead of skeleton over here, bones, we're going to change it to surface triangles, and that's going to then be a more even distribution all over the character. So we'll save that, and we are ready to retest. All right, and there we go. And everything's adhering even as we move, so we are all set to move along. So if you like this effect as is, feel free to use it, but some other things that you might consider updating are, for example, the particle color, the lifespan, the velocity at which the particles are moving upward. But like I said in the intro, I think I'm totally going to use this in the future. But now let's go in and duplicate this Niagara system because we're going to use it for the gameplay ability pickup effect. So back in our ability pickup character effects folder, I'm going to right click on this, we're going to duplicate it, and this one's going to be titled NS Fire Ability Pickup Effect _base. And we'll go into that. And there's just a few updates we need to make here. So to start, I'm going to pause it. I'm actually going to close out of our previous one. We won't need that. The first thing is I'm going to update all the emitters to go off of this system. So for the emitter state here, instead of self, we're going to set it to system, all three of them. And for the system as a whole, we're going to make this, instead of an infinite loop, a one-time loop, so once. And then we have to adjust the spawn of each of these. So instead of a spawn rate over time, it's going to be a one-time instantaneous burst of particles, because that's when the ability gets picked up. So I'm going to come up to emitter update, and we are going to do spawn burst instantaneous. And it's going to be a lot of particles for each of these. For the flames, it's going to be 5,000. And I'm going to uncheck the spawn rate here. And then what I can do is I can copy the spawn burst instantaneous, paste it over here. I'm going to move it above spawn rate. For the embers, it's going to be even more, 20,000. And you can play with these numbers and crank it up, see what effect you get. Uncheck spawn rate here. For the distortion effect, we already have spawn burst instantaneous, but it's just set to 0, so we're going to make that 1200 and uncheck spawn rate here. The next thing is we're going to make these particles last a little bit longer. So under initialize particle, instead of 0.3 to 0.5, we're going to make them last from 1.4 seconds to 2.0. Same thing for the other two emitters, 1.4 to 2.0 and 1.4 to 2.0. And that's it for our new pickup Niagara system, but we're going to test it the very same way that we did our first one. So back in our third person character, I'm just going to switch this out to NS_fire ability pickup effect. There we go. Compile and save third person character, and away we go. Okay, there we go. And I can move around and I still get the effect, and it lasts for about 1.5 to 2 seconds. So far, so good. So now let's see if we can get this triggering when our gameplay abilities actually get picked up, at least our fire abilities, and then we'll do air afterwards. So back in our third person character, I'm going to start by creating a new function, and this is going to be called gameplay ability pickup effect. And we have to actually pass in the gameplay ability that we're picking up. So for inputs here, I'll add an input, and I'll call this simply gameplay ability pickup. And it's going to be of type gameplay ability, and this is the type that we set up back in episode 26, object reference. And then from that gameplay ability pickup, we have to get the ability type, because depending on the type of the ability, we're going to have a different effect. So we're going to do a switch based on that ability type, connect this up. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to have a local variable set up here. And the reason I'm setting up a local variable is this is going to be our Niagara system. And that local variable is going to change depending on the type of gameplay ability that's being picked up. So I'm going to call this the local ability pickup effect Niagara system, long name. And it's going to be of type if I search for Niagara system. Niagara system here, object reference. So I'll compile and save the third person character blueprint. I'm going to pull in a reference to that local ability Niagara system and set it. And we're going to set it specifically for fire. And for fire, we're going to set it to ns_fire. If I scroll down, it's our ability pickup effect base. And then from this, I'll drag out a pin and we are going to spawn system attached. And the system template's going to be from the local variable. So we'll drag in a reference to that, get connected up. I'm going to attach it always to the mesh, so drag in a reference to our mesh just like that. Attach point name, I'll make that pelvis again. And last but not least for this, make sure to check auto destroy here. So to get this actually up and running, we need to go back to our event graph, and whatever mechanism we're using to actually pick up our ability, we have to call that function. And actually before I do that, let's just delete out U here. And then we'll zoom out and we'll come up to up here, event pickup ability. And this we set up in episodes 33 and 34 of our gameplay ability hotbar episodes. And the first thing this does is it checks to see, do we have space on our hotbar? And if so, then it picks up the ability on the hotbar. And if we don't have space on the hotbar, then it checks our inventory. It picks up our ability on the inventory. So we don't care whether or not the ability is picked up on a hotbar or the inventory. We just care that the ability is picked up. So what I'm going to do is make some space over here. And from pickup ability on hotbar, we're going to call the gameplay ability pickup effect function. Make this a little bit longer. Take that same function, paste it down here. Connect it up here as well for the inventory. Connect this up to here. But the last thing, we have to actually hook up the gameplay ability pickup here. And so I'm going to take our gameplay ability pickup right there, and I'm going to connect this up just like this. And we got to do the same exact thing down here. So connect it up just like that, add in a reroute, move out the comment here. And we are ready to test this out. So compile and save, and let's do it. And actually you could test to make sure that this doesn't do anything when we pick up an air ability. So let's run over an air ability. Nothing. Okay, we got the ability, but now let's run over our flamethrower. And there we go. Perfect. But now I want to do something that's completely unique to the game we're making. And that is, I want a different pickup effect if our character runs over an ability that they already have versus a brand new ability. And the way I'm thinking about it is this, that if the character doesn't have an ability yet and they pick up the ability, it starts at an intensity of 100. But if they run over and pick up an ability that they already have, it just ups the intensity by 10. And so I want to take that new intensity, whatever it might be, 110, 120, 130, however many times they pick it up, and I want to pass it into a new Niagara system that's kind of a scaled down version of the system that we just created. So then there's a visual indicator to the player, okay, I didn't pick up a new ability, it's just adding on power to an existing ability, and they can judge how strong that ability now is based on the intensity of the pickup effect. So to start, I'm going to close out of our NS Fire ability pickup effect here, and we'll go back to the Niagara System folder, and we'll right click on this, we'll duplicate it, and instead of pickup effect base, it's going to be pickup effect with UP, user parameters. So we'll double click, go into that. And I'll pause this. And the first thing we're going to do is create a brand new user exposed parameter. If you followed other episodes where we've done this with Niagara, you know exactly where this is going. So under make new comment, we choose float, and it's going to be intensity. That's what we're naming it. Now for this new effect, it's not going to be as elaborate as when picking up a brand new ability. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to uncheck the flames emitter. It's just going to be embers and distortion. And I want the number of embers to be reflected by how intense the ability pickup is. So that's where we're going to use this user intensity parameter. So for the spawn burst instantaneous here, instead of 20,000, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this over to a multiply int. So the first there, multiply int. And then we can drag in our user intensity over to the A, and then the B, we're going to make that 200. So if our intensity is 100, it's just going to be 20,000. But if our intensity goes up to, let's say, 200, then it's 40,000, twice as strong. And it automatically truncates the float to an int. That just means it shaves off the decimal point. And the reason it does that is because it can't spawn a fraction of a particle. It has to be a whole number. So now we need to set up our blueprint logic to discern, is our character picking up a brand new ability or one that they already have? So for this, we actually have to navigate over to our player controller, because our player controller is what stores all of our gameplay abilities. And that I created under the core folder and my player controller here. And this was started in episode 32. And we're going to create a brand new function. And this is going to be called Gameplay Ability Intensity Boost. And we need 2 inputs for this function. So I'll select it and 2 inputs. So the first one's going to be Gameplay Ability. And no surprise here, that's going to be of type Gameplay Ability. And the second one is going to be the boost amount. So how much are we boosting this ability? And that's going to be a float. And what this function is going to do is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to boost the intensity of our gameplay ability. So first we need to get the intensity of the gameplay ability that we pass into it. And then from that, we need to add our boost amount. So connect up our boost amount there, put in a little reroute. And then from that gameplay ability, we're going to set our new intensity. So set intensity, connect this up here and connect this up there. Another reroute. Actually, I'll put in 2 reroutes. And what I'm going to do here, this is just temporary, but good habit, just to test, make sure that things work. We're going to do a print string, and we are going to print, I'm just going to append the word intensity with the actual intensity. And so connect this up just like this. Move this down here. We'll delete this out later on. So now we need to do a complicated function. And this is the function that's actually going to check to see, okay, do we already have that ability? So come over here, +sign for functions, and we're going to do already has ability check. And once again, we need an input, and that input is our gameplay ability of type gameplay ability, object reference. We're going to promote this to a local variable, right click, promote to local variable, and I'm going to name it our local gameplay ability. So to see if we already have this ability on our hotbar or our inventory, we are going to compare 2 different things. We have 2 different enums that are assessing that. And these we set up back in episode 26. We ended up changing the name of one of them, but they're both the same ones that we set up in episode 26. So if we navigate over to blueprints, gameplay abilities, I'm talking about these 2 here. Gameplay ability type, how gameplay ability is used. And if those 2 match on any gameplay ability that we have either in our hotbar or our inventory, then we already have the ability. So what I'm going to do is from our local gameplay ability, I'm going to get the ability type, and I'm also going to get how the gameplay ability is used. And we're going to promote both of those to local variables. So promote that one, connect this up, right click here, promote that one, connect it up as well. So the first one, just going to right click, local ability type. Second one, same kind of thing. Rename local how gameplay ability is used. Gotta get the capitalization right. Capitalization. All right, so first we're gonna check to see, is it on the hotbar? So for that, we're gonna get our gameplay ability hotbar, and we're gonna do a for each loop with break. And the reason we're doing a break is if we find a match, might as well break. So the first thing is we got to check for each hotbar array element, is it valid? Because if it's not valid, we don't need to do anything else. So we'll connect this up here. Only if it's valid are we going to branch. So what are we branching off of? Well, we're doing a series of comparisons. So first from the array element, and this is every single element in our hotbar, we are getting the ability type. So get ability type, and we're going to compare that to our local ability type. And we're going to say, okay, are those 2 things equal? And this is the gameplay ability that we're running over, that we're basically picking up. But that's not the only thing we need to compare, because we also need to compare how the gameplay ability is used. So we get that variable, and once again, we'll compare that to our local variable. Equals equals, enum, connect this up. If both of these are true, which means we need an AND statement, if both of them are true, then it truly is a match of the gameplay ability. So then this branch is going to be true. And so if it's true, the way I'm going to handle this is with 2 additional local variables. So we got to create those. We're going to have a local match found, question mark. That's going to be a Boolean. And then we also need one for local gameplay ability match. And that's going to be our gameplay ability. Gameplay ability, object reference. So if we get a match here, then we're going to set this. So local match found is going to be set to true. And we're also going to set our local gameplay ability match. So set and connect this up here. And then we need to hook it up. So what we need to hook it up to is our array element here. And I'm going to add another reroute and another reroute and another reroute. No, just kidding, just 2. And then once we set both of these things, then finally we can come over here and break. And that is quite messy. So 2 more reroutes. I'm going to be the reroute king by the time we're done. But we're not done yet. We still have our inventory to do the same thing. And even before that, we got something. So under outputs here, we need to add 2 outputs. So the first one is going to be match found. Match found. You ever see the old FBI movies where they're using a computer system from the 1980s and they say match found? Anyway, the second output is going to be the gameplay ability match. And that's going to be a type gameplay ability. So we'll take our return node, move it over here, because what we need to do is on complete, we need to do a branch. We need to evaluate, okay, is our local match found true? Because if we did find a match in the hotbar, we don't need to bother searching the inventory. So if that's true, then we can go direct to the return node. And we can return that, yep, we found a local match, and we can return what gameplay ability is being matched. So last but not least, we got to do this whole thing for the inventory as well. But luckily, this is not nearly as difficult because we can just take this entire setup, paste it down here, connect it up just like this. And instead of our gameplay ability hotbar, we can just use our gameplay ability inventory. Connect this up. And you could collapse all of this down to even a smaller function. I'm just going to keep this all in one function. It's a big function, but it's relatively easy to follow. And then finally, we take our last return node and we are going to return down here upon completion. So if your function looks like this, that means you've got everything. Make sure you updated this to be the inventory. Make sure these are hooked up. Make sure local match found is checked here. Make sure by default it's set to unchecked, because if it doesn't find a match, then it'll be false here. So if you got all that, then we can go ahead and compile and save. And now we have to hook this up in our event graph on third person character. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, because what we got to do is we got to take all of this stuff following the event pickup ability. We're going to move it all out, make some space. I'm going to take these 2 nice little reroutes, move them over, and right next to here, I got to get a reference to our player controller. So player controller reference, because that's where our function for checking to see, do we already have the ability? That's where that function is. So get player controller reference, and we're going to do our already has ability check. Connect this up. Make sure to connect this reroute up to gameplay ability. If we found a match, we are going to branch. If we did not get a match, let's do that first. That's simple. We just go right on and attempt to pick up the ability. But if we did get a match, then what? So then we got to get another reference to our player controller. From that, we got to call our other function, the first one we set up, gameplay ability intensity boost, that one right there. Hook up from the true right here. And we take our gameplay ability match from here, hook it up there. I'm going to add another reroute, just like that. Move this branch over a little bit. And by the way, by the end of the episode, we're going to collapse all of this that's after event pickup ability. We're going to collapse all of it to a function, because this is starting to get ridiculous. Now, just for the purposes of testing, let's set our boost amount to be something a little bit out of whack. So how about 500? And the last thing is here, we don't need to pick up anything because we already have it. So we don't need to do any of that stuff down here. But we do have to hook it up to, if successfully picks up the ability, set the pickup actor to be inert. So I'll do that. I'll put in a reroute right here. And it should look something like this. And if you're all set, if you got all that, then we are ready to test. So compile and save this. And I'm also going to close out of our fire ability pickup effect. We won't need that. Now to test this, I recommend taking one of the fire abilities. So I'm going to take our fireball, and all I'm going to do is duplicate the ability pickup. And I'm going to put about 4 or 5 of those in a string, basically in a nice little row. Make it really easy for my character to pick up multiple. And keep in mind, this test isn't actually a full test because we haven't actually hooked up our new Niagara system yet. So all we're doing is we're checking to see, does the intensity print? We should have a print string of our intensity. It should go from 100 to 500, actually 600, and then 1100, 1600. So we'll start, pick up our first ability. Yep, we get our gameplay ability effect, and let's test it out. Yeah, regular ability, so far so good. Then 2, intensity 600 in the top left, so far so good. And we didn't get the ability effect around us. So, and now 1100, or let's do 1600. Yeah, so how about we nuke that rock over there? Looking good. So now let's hook up the Niagara effect. That's kind of a scaled down effect. So for that, we got to go back to our third person character, and we can duplicate our gameplay ability pickup effect function. So I'm going to duplicate, and this is going to be gameplay ability boost only effect. It's going to work much the same way, but I'm just going to make a little bit of space here, because what we're going to do is from the gameplay ability pickup, we have to get our intensity. And then from that intensity, we're going to promote that to a local variable, connect that up here just like this. This is going to be, if I right click, rename our local intensity. And then we'll come over here to the right. We don't need to worry about changing our spawn system attached here, because we just need to change our local ability pickup effect Niagara System. So I can just search for NS Fire, Come down to the bottom, we've got our pickup effect with UP. And then this one is expecting a user parameter of intensity, so let's set that based on our new local intensity. Drag it up in here and say set float parameter under particle system. The parameter is going to be based on our local intensity. Get, connect this up, and parameter name, aptly titled intensity. So compile this. We can go back to our event graph and our crazy spaghetti here that we are going to collapse. We can then call that function right here. So right after we actually have the intensity boost. So I drag in a reference to that function and connect it up here. Connect this up to the rewrap. But there's something missing here because you heard me say I want this effect to be based on how much our intensity actually got boosted based on the new intensity. So we got to pass our intensity from here after it's boosted over to here. So for that, we need to update this function in the myPlayer controller. So I'll go back there and I'll go into the intensity boost function. We can delete out our print string now. We won't need that. But instead, what I'm going to do is select this and then make an output. And the output is going to be our gameplay ability output of type, you guessed it, gameplay ability object reference. Move this over here and connect it up just like this. Connect this up here. Compile and save this back to the third person character. So now we got our gameplay ability output and we're expecting a gameplay ability pickup and voila, connect. So now let's compile and save and we're ready to test this again, but let's keep the boost amount here something high like 500, and that way each and every time we pick up the same ability we can see, okay, does that particle effect become stronger and stronger over time? All right, first ability, yep, still get the effect and looking good. Next ability, so what's going on? So I noticed the same kind of issue when we upgraded to 5.1. It's a very easy fix. So if this happens to you, you know exactly what to do. So let's go back into our Niagara folder. So I'm going to have to do this in both of these. So we'll go into a with UP to start. So basically we just got to duplicate our sprite renderer material here. M radial gradient. I'm going to go into that folder. I'm going to right click. I'm going to duplicate. It's going to be M radial gradient 1. I don't even think you need to recompile this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Close out of that. We'll switch it right here. M radial gradient 1. Save this. Close out of that Niagara system, we'll go into our other one, back to the pickup effect base. So pause this and into Embers, sprite renderer, switch out to M radial gradient 1, and we're back to normal. No idea why it's doing that, but let's test it one more time. All right, first ability, boom, looking good. Second ability, boom, just the light up, that's perfect. Okay, now on to third, does it get stronger? Yeah, so even more intense. Fourth, yeah, really intense. So you get the idea. So as our intensity increases, the player is going to know that by looking at that effect. So now we're going to go on to our air abilities and we're going to do the same exact kind of thing, but we don't need to recreate the functions that we already have. We just need to replace it with a new Niagara system. So we got to create 2 additional Niagara systems and then we'll be all set. So back in our third person character, let's reduce this down to not 1, 10. So each time we get an ability we already have, it's going to be boosted by 10. And now we're ready to go on to air abilities. So for that content drawer, we're going to go over to Niagara, gameplay abilities, and air. And these abilities we all set up back in episode 39 and 40. 40 was when we actually set up the Niagara effects. We're going to take our NS small cloud base system here. We're going to duplicate this. Going to be NS air ability pickup effect underscore base, and scroll down a little bit here on the left, and under gameplay ability pickups we're going to move that to our ability pickup character effects folder. Move here, navigate over to that folder, and we'll open up our air ability. We're also going to need our fire ability pickup effect base function as well, so we'll open this up. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to steal our embers emitter, we're going to copy that, and we're going to paste it in the air ability. Paste here. And for the air particle emitter here, we're going to add a few things. So we got to copy our initialized mesh reproduction sprite, copy that, and paste that here. And here we got to update our particle scale to 50, make it quite a bit bigger. We also got to copy and paste spawn burst instantaneous, so copy, paste it here. Uncheck the spawn rate. I'm just going to move it up. I'm going to change this instead of 20,000. We're going to change it just to 1,000. Copy and paste the skeletal mesh location here. Copy and paste. And then last but not least, under initialized particle, we're going to change this not from 5 to 7 seconds. It's going to be 1.8 to 2.4. I'm also going to change under properties here from CPU, going to move it to GPU, and instead of dynamic, fixed. That's just going to be a little bit less performance intensive. And the emitter state, yep, we got to switch that from self to system. And for the system, we already did this, loop behavior instead of infinite over to once. Now we can hit play for our emitter, and we see we got the embers still and their lit up fire color. And we don't want that for our air ability. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update the color of those embers. So the color here. And what I could do is I could actually delete out all of this. I can delete out the curve and we could just set the vector to be 1, 1, 1. But I'm just going to show you how to adjust these curves. And we could see we can actually adjust the colors here. So if I move it down, it becomes more yellow, move it up. So 1, 1, 1 is just white light. It doesn't have to be exactly 1, 1, 1, but you know, close enough. And then over to the second point here. So we do the same thing, zoom in really close and just move in all of these to be roughly on top of each other. Easy to forget. So under scale sprite size here, instead of the particles starting basically at half size, we're going to reduce that all the way down to 0. But as it currently stands, it takes the entire length of the system to then scale up to 1. And I just want to scale up to full size a little bit faster. So I'm going to make this 0.6. So we are all set with this base effect, and I'll save this. And then on our third person character, I'm going to go into the pickup effect function. And all we got to do here, really simple. We just duplicate this node right here, plug in our air, plug over here. I'm going to move all these down a little bit, and I'll switch out this system here. So this is going to be ns_air. It's going to be our air ability pickup effect. And once we get to water abilities, earth, and our unknown ability, yep, we'll do those too. So compile and save our third person character, and we are ready to test this. So there's our air ability pickup effect. Run over it. So now we need one with user parameters because it's going to work the same exact way. So you know what's coming. So we right click on this. We're going to duplicate it, change the name from base to with UP. Double click on that. Just going to uncheck our particle emitter here. And then what we could do is we could just open up our fire ability pickup effect with UP, because little trick here, if we copy and paste our spawn burst instantaneous from embers here, so copy this, because it's got our user intensity variable there. If we paste it into our embers here, so right click, paste, then it's automatically going to pull in our user exposed parameter right there. We can delete out our spawn burst instantaneous here. And then the last thing I'm going to do, same thing with the distortion effect. We're just going to copy that entire emitter, copy here, right click over here and paste that in. So we're not going to have the distortion effect on the initial pickup because we're going to have the cloud instead, but just on the subsequent pickups, I want kind of a wavy effect. So compile and save this, close out of this Niagara system, our other one as well. And then in our second function under a third person character gameplay ability boost only effect function, come over here and copy and paste this for the air, connect this up, and we'll select our NS air with UP. So pickup effect with UP. Connect this up here, move these both down, compile and save, and you know what's next. But actually, before we do that, we got to duplicate this series of times. Gonna be a cloudy day. I have a 6-year-old, give me a break. All right, let's go. So now we have a series of our gameplay ability pickups for air, and start with one, go from there. So here's the first one. Get the full effect. That looks good. And because we decrease the intensity boost, it's not going to be as pronounced for these subsequent ones, but really I'm making sure that we don't get the cloud effect around our character here. So second one. Yep, just a little distortion effect. That looks good. That should be a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter still each time. Yeah, looking good. So now, as we do at the end of every episode, clean up. And I'm going to start by cleaning up in our world here. So delete out all of our extra gameplay abilities. Let's navigate back over to our third person character. And we got two functions we need to categorize. So under category here, I'm going to put them under gameplay abilities. Same thing with this one right here, boost only effect under gameplay abilities. And then over to our event graph, because you heard me say all of this stuff we are going to collapse down to a function. Right click, collapse to function. Ooh, that's a lot cleaner. And this function, very simple. I'm going to rename, it's going to be our attempt to pick up ability. But let's also update these input pins to be a little bit more accurate. So I'll go into that, move this up here. So the first one, this is going to be our gameplay ability. And the second one, this is going to be our gameplay ability pickup. Back to our event graph, I'm just going to comment this. So this is our gameplay ability pickup. Very simple. And we also want to categorize the attempt to pick up ability under our gameplay abilities. Compile and save. So last but not least, under my player controller. So core folder, my player controller. Same thing here, but these two functions, I'm actually going to create a new category here. We just have everything under gameplay ability UI, but now I'm just going to have this under gameplay abilities. And the same one with already has ability check. So it's just going to be gameplay abilities. I might end up categorizing some of the gameplay ability UI functions in our player controller under that, but I think we're okay for now. Compile and save. So for sticking around to the end of the episode, I'd like to show you a little bonus. This is pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to use this, but it's worth knowing. So first, let me start by illustrating the problem. So what I wanted to initially try out was, could I hide my character mesh and just have the Niagara system around the mesh so you could see all the animations, but it'd be literally just the fire effect. I thought that would be really neat. So what I did is I went to third person character, and just to test this out, I went under mesh, and for the mesh, I searched for hidden in game, and then I checked that checkbox. And then I'll just come down here a little bit and we'll just search for keyboard U again. There we go. And we got to do a spawn system attached. And the system we're going to use for this is what we set up initially. So the NS Fire Mesh Sprite system. So I can just drag that in there. Attach to component, it's going to be attached to the mesh, but the mesh is hidden, remember, so this is a little tricky. So attach point is going to be pelvis, and yeah, that's all we need. So let's try this out, and you'll see the problem, and then I'll talk about how to fix it. So after I hit begin play, don't have our character, but I know we do have our character because I'm still getting footsteps. But now we hit U, and you'll see the problem. So it is reflecting our character's shape, but nothing is actually showing up. And the reason for that, I think, is because if our character's mesh is not actually showing up, it's not going to render the animation because that would be too performance intensive. So I found a really easy fix for this. So let me show you that. So what we're going to do on a third person character, if I select the mesh here, instead of hidden in game, I'm going to uncheck that. And then I'm just going to go back to the full details panel. We have to go into our materials here. And I'll actually go into the folder for the material, and I'll go into our material instance here. And then I'm going to go into our parent material here. So what I would recommend is before doing this, duplicate the parent material, but I'm just going to show you it real quick. So the easiest solution to this was I created an opacity mask. So I just did a scalar parameter, and you could control a scalar parameter via Blueprint. Like you could set this to be on or off. And I'll just name this opacity. Now if it's set to 0, you see the material disappears. If it's set to anything above 0.3, I think, then the material is going to show up. So let's do 0.4. Yeah, then it shows up. I don't know what that threshold is or why it's there, but anything below 0.4, it just completely disappears. So if I save this, and we could just delete it out afterwards, close out of both of these, we'll try again. So now our mesh is technically still visible, except the material our mesh has is transparent, is masked. So when I hit U, and then we got the fire effect when running. So I don't know how exactly I'm going to use this yet, but I'm definitely going to use it. But now the final cleanup to really end the episode. So we're going to go back to that folder, back in the material instance, back in the parent material. I'm going to delete out that opacity scalar parameter, restore our character back to his normal skin, and we'll delete out the U that we use for testing purposes. Compile and save. So that concludes our episode for today. But coming out of this episode, it's obvious we're still lacking something, right? Because we got the Niagara effects, but we're missing sound effects. And I figure this is a great inroad to start with meta sounds. So I hope to see you there in the next episode.